Good morning.
Good morning.
Hello.
Here we are, hopefully. We were here last week, and something. So that recording is probably lost. But here we are, new attempts, new opportunities. What is our topic for today?
Our topic, I think we wrapped it when we did our introduction talk. We wrapped it up with limiting self-beliefs, which was triggered by my story last week about self-doubt.
Mm-hmm.
So, why do those things happen, and what do they do to us? How do they snowball into our life? Yeah, so maybe that.
I think what when you shared with me, what stand out to me is also not necessarily only limiting self-beliefs which is kind of this is who I am belief that is constant, but also this moments of self-doubt. Something happens suddenly. I spiral down into I'm not. It's sort of maybe I'm a scrum master or who knows, and something happens and I was full of confidence, and now suddenly it breaks and I'm doubting everything, and I think I'm a fake, and it spirals for several days. And that's interesting because that's who we are. We humans, we do that. We become subjects to emotional states. And is there a way to relate to it differently? That's the question I'm probing into. It didn't sound to me that it was very pleasant to you. It was difficult.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. It was. I kind of carried it for a couple of days, and is it like doubting myself? Is it the way I'm viewing this? Am I doing my best enough? Am I delivering enough? Am I performant enough? So those things. And maybe to add to that, Magnus, yesterday I tried to rationalize it. Like I opened my agenda and I looked through the last 4 months to see what I've done, and to look at the idea of have I done enough and have I done my best enough and those things. And even though my agenda rationally showed me all those things I've done, which is relatively a lot, it still didn't take away that emotional point of self-doubt, which is a thought on its own, I think.
So even though there are facts that points to a different story, it doesn't really help.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't take away the feeling. Well, maybe it helped a little bit. It kind of soothed my conscience or something like that. But there was still this feeling of self-doubt was still in there.
And this feeling of self-doubt, I think it's interesting to really probe deep into if we now allow ourselves to kind of most life coaching. What are some words you would put to that self-doubt? What's the nature? Describe it, if you will. I invite you to describe it as if you would describe the taste of a wine or a beautiful dish. How is that self-doubt? What are the spices in it?
Yeah. It's kind of like, if we're gonna keep the food metaphor, it's kind of a sauce that is over everything. Like you cannot pick any piece of the plate without that sauce being there. It's like every part I looked at, and it was really professionally, because personally, I'm good. But professionally, like everything I looked at kind of had this bit of sauce on it of, am I good enough? Am I doing enough? Am I doing my best enough? Am I delivering enough? Am I actually getting to results? Am I connecting enough with my colleagues? Am I interested enough in what they're doing? So all of that, and if I try to wrap this up in one sentence, is it enough? Is this good enough? I think that's the question that was over the spice that was on every piece on my plate, basically.
Yeah. Is this good enough? Or other, yeah, I kind of suggest it's not good enough. It has not happened yet, or whatever. Mm-hmm. It needs to happen sooner, more.
Yeah, and then that pressure. That's the other thing, eh? The pressure that you put on yourself, or that I put on myself. Like, do your best, work harder, invest more. While at the same time, when I rationalized it yesterday, I could see that I have invested and I have worked and I have even tried to deliver things. And I know in my head that most of the results of the work I'm doing now is long term. It's small steps that we see over time. And there are things that we see when we look back. We'll see what the value is that we've delivered or that I delivered. But at this point, even all that rationalization didn't help, basically.
Okay. And what about now, though? Is it still there?
It's better. There's still a bit there, honestly, but it's better. Like I told you, I got an email from my let's call it my manager yesterday, who kind of gave me a high five and thanked me for my good work and the things I bring to the organization I work for right now, which was really nice because it came at a moment where I kind of needed that, I think. And it took away a lot. And now I still have this smaller feeling that I'm still going to ask the teams I work with. Like, I want to ask them about, are you happy with my work? What can I do to make it better? Am I connected enough? I want to maybe share my doubts or my insecurities with them as well. And maybe that's a search for confirmation. I don't know, but that's a small part. That's a small part that's still there.
There's a lot of things to unpack here. I invited you to pierce down into this because I recognize myself, and at times I will be you. Anyone listening in will be. You recognize this. Something happens. Something collapses, and maybe work-wise, suddenly you're full of self-doubt, and I'm not doing it good enough, and you're being lived by your emotions and feelings and everything. As you said, there's a sauce. Everything tastes differently. It's like you have different Googles and you view the world, and everything is viewed through a new lens. So why does this happen? And why is it enough with one email to shift? Well, maybe not entirely. Why is it good enough? Why is it enough with an external thing to shift it again? So an external thing probably happened that shifted you into a state, and there's an external thing that shifted you out, and it lingered for days. One thing is that, is it so that we want to avoid these passages in our lives? Do we want to fight them? Do we want to oh no, I'm afraid of this. I don't want to be here. I want to get out. Maybe not. I'm thinking of a good friend, and he would say, so what does this feeling want to teach you? What does it want to say? And that's the first advice. Be curious. I mean, it's hard, possibly. Why is it that I feel this way? Or is there any information in here? How do I know this to be true? What's in the present actual reality that suggests that I should feel this way? Or is there something in my history? Or is there something in my projections of the future? How do I know my feeling to be true or relevant?
Absolutely. Yeah. Maybe to add to that, I talked to my partner about it yesterday when we did our evening stroll with the baby. And the question, and she does that a lot, and I think it's a really good question. She said, like, if you were coaching me right now, or if I would tell you the same, what would you tell me?
Mm-hmm.
And that, I think that's like that is also self-leadership, right? Like, if I was coaching myself, what would I tell me? If I was trying to give myself advice, what would I tell me?
Right. Beautiful.
So I think that's that self-reflection, which is also about growing, I guess, is a good moment. But still, I did a lot of reflection in the past days, and it was still hard to get rid of it. And maybe it's this sinus movement, like, and you're in the trough for a moment, and then something triggers you, and something pushes you in, but something will always also get you out. I don't know. I don't know.
I'm just trying to acknowledge what I hear and put a title to it. So I suggested something which is a perspective shift. And you talked about your partner, and she asked this question, and she suggested again a perspective shift. And she suggests if you kind of look at this as if it was a third person thing, that also helps. And when we find ourselves in a bit of fight or flight mode, we kind of lose that. We become subject to the feeling. We don't relate to it anymore. Everything, as you said, is like there's a sauce, there's a bad taste to everything. It permeates everything. But then the actual reality, it was all the same. Like if a couple of weeks back, the situation at work was probably the same and you felt great about it. Isn't that interesting? I'm thinking about Anil Seth, neuroscience professor, and Susan Bartlett. I have so hard time to remember her name. They are both studying the brain, and man, there's a model. We can think of our model as the brain is really a prediction machine. It doesn't really sense the reality as it is. It's a bit lazy. It's a prediction machine. And so if you want to make it really simple, you could say sometimes there are just memories that suggest to you what is going on, and you make your best assumption. Lisa Bartlett Feldman, there we go. Lisa, she has done a lot of solid research with fMRIs, and emotions is to a large extent just your brain's best guess what's going on. And that to me is like really mind-boggling, because usually we trust our feelings. But it seems to me she's pointing at an opportunity to shift from being subjected to be lived by a certain type of emotion, and starting just observing it and say, oh, that's interesting. This is the way I feel. That's not so good, is it? But why is it? How is it? And what's more? What's there? Usually we get occupied with it. But it's not easy. In it, when we're in, we can talk about it now as if it's gone. It's easy to put words to it. But when we are in these phases, it's hard. At work, certainly. Oh man, have I been in those phases? Of course I have. Will I? Probably. But what will happen with a human being that acknowledge that we go through these phases?
Mm-hmm.
And someone that stays curious, so what can I learn from it? What will happen? It seems to me that it's a clear promise in that of human growth and development.
Yeah, absolutely.
If we treat it as something to get rid of something unnatural, or something I should be ashamed of, that's not it. This is who we are.
Absolutely. And now there's a word that triggers me, Magnus, and that's the being ashamed of it.
Oh,
It's it's not that I because that's not something I felt, but I think let's call it the burden I was carrying was relieved when I talked to my partner about it. It was relieved when my boss sent me that little message to say I was doing great. So maybe there's a saying that if you share a burden, it gets lighter. So maybe there's a thing there as well to talk to people. You don't have to shout it out to everybody, but like find the right people to talk to, the people you trust, you love, that are close to you. Share that feeling and talk to them about it. I think that's, apart from the rationalization I try to do myself, I think that's what helped me most, is to have that one person ask you that one right question or give you that other bit of perspective at that point. How do you see that?
Oh, yes. No man is an island. Sometimes, at least in Western society or modern, post-industrialistic era, we are thinking that we are self-sufficient, self-made. It's in our hands, very individualistic, and there's much data to suggest that is not really how we work. As human beings, we are really about being connected, and to skillfully develop our ability to do relations, and to be able to have relations such that we can say, this is who I am, even in my baddest moments. Like Beatrice and me, my beloved partner, such a blessing to meet her. And of course, we have our moments. I have my moments. I'm not good. I'm behaving in a way, and something happens when we start to say that this is who we are. We are dysfunctional. Sometimes we get into states that it's not only bad for ourselves, but it radiates energy into the other person. But when you start to accept that this is who we are, then is the moment when I can own my responsibility. I can own my responsibility. It might not be my fault that I am in this emotional state, but it is my responsibility to deal with it maturely, and to maturely, I guess, interact with other people to make it more constructive. Right? As you hinted at it, someone out being not you was a sounding board, was in that moment with you, and then it shifts. And so I guess the invite here is to do that with ourselves and with the other person. You did it very, very considerate, and I had a moment last week, and I just, at the moment, I sighed, and something shifted in my body language, and I was not even aware. But you asked in that moment, and you asked again, now we start this episode, what is that? That is very pro-human. With great consideration, you asked me once again, and is there something there? Is it, and I don't think maybe that it is, but it's a very good pattern. What would happen? What would happen? How many times do we go through our work life, and we try to hide these things? So I mean, are you grabbing your cup of coffee and you say to your colleagues or peers and say, you know what? I have to say this, guys. I'm suddenly so full of self-doubt. The ideas we're having and the project, I'm not feeling it just now. I'm leaning towards that this is just a false make-believe, but I'm not in a good state. I'm not in a good shape right now. How do you view the world? Is it going okay for us? Are we doing well? What would happen if you had these conversations at work? Not necessarily that you have to be private, but you could be personal with intent to help yourself as team to grow, to do the values that said you wanted to do, right? We make each other well. We are each other's environment. Sorry, long answer, but we are no islands.
No. Don't say sorry. It's just you've triggered about 3 or 4 thought trains now, and I'm thinking, which am I going to jump on a thought train, or am I going to stay with the subject right now? But it's, I think if we zoom out of the self-doubt thing, is because I really believe we all have these moments, right? I hope this relates to the people listening to us as well. But I think that if we are in a group, there's so many sayings, and they're supposedly African sayings. It takes a village to raise a child. That's about community. The concept of Ubuntu, which says "I am because we are." It's this community belonging thing. If we look at Maslow, the idea of belonging is important. But the invitation to show that vulnerability, we are. You talked about individualistic behavior and individualistic beliefs or cultures that we are often in. But it's with sharing the burden that it becomes lighter, but also in showing that vulnerability, saying like, my energy is low because I'm in self-doubt at this point. I'm questioning myself. So how are you doing? That showing of vulnerability invites new vulnerability, and that creates the trust and the space to talk about it, but also to help each other relieve the burden. And yeah, you said it's pro-human. It's a way we can lift ourselves. We can pick ourselves out of the trough of the sinus movement, and it's not going to happen on our own. I think we need people around us that help us with that community that picks us up or gives us a nudge again, or injects that bit of energy in us. So that's one thought train.
There are so many thought trains, and I laugh at myself because at the moment I said I'm sorry, was when I found myself to have been inside myself in a thought train. And then I observed that. I didn't know it, but then I suddenly observe it. And then my habitual pattern is to say, I'm sorry. And Serge, you're friendly to me. You say, don't be sorry. Oh, but it's like that recognition. And what is that pattern? For moments, our brains are in the moment and we're being lived by thought trains. And we're not necessarily present with the moment or the space we're in. We're in something in here. To some extent, we're just talking about these patterns. We can become trapped in emotional states as well, and sometimes they linger for days or weeks or months. But stay connected, and we might help each other out to be in a better space, to be allowed to be as we are, who we are, which then actually helps shift it. It's some paradox in there. When we stop fight it, we win.
Oh, that's a beautiful rap, actually. If we stop to fight it, we win. Yeah. I want to have a t-shirt with that.
That's good. Okay. Thanks for playing. Thanks for being part of this. This is really cool. I love this work. I treat this as well, it's not work, really. This is life. If you view this, if this triggered any thoughts or objections or comments or add-ons, please do say or state. And if you have any suggestions for what we want to do next, if you can think of a topic or something that you're curious about that might be a service, do suggest. That's an invitation to make us better. If we are producers or listeners, it doesn't matter. Thanks for viewing. Have a
Thank
great
you,
day.
everyone.